Hello, everyone. We're so pleased you're here today for the opening of a new exhibition. This is the opening of Me Down the Fiddle, Norwegian Fiddlers, Fiddles, and Fiddle Tunes in the Upper Midwest. The exhibit includes Hardanger fiddles and flat fiddles, as well as musical styles from Norway and America. The exhibit was made possible by a grant from the American Scandinavian Foundation and generous gifts to the Vesterheim Annual Fund by Carol Birkland and Tom Woxland, and Peter Dahlen and Mary Carlsen. The project consultant and guest curator for the exhibition is fiddler and music historian Beth Hoven Rotto. Let's give a welcome to Beth. Beth has worked tirelessly for the last year to gather stories and images and instruments to share with you. And this is just a selection of the notable fiddlers and tune collectors and everyday folks who have enriched our lives with music and helped to preserve an important part of Norwegian and American history. So we want to thank you, Beth, for making this amazing collection possible. And we're so pleased you're here to join us to really kick off this exhibition properly. Beth.
Thank you. Well, I'm just overwhelmed to have you all here and so happy that you're here. I just want to thank you for coming, and I know a lot of you have helped me with information, with pictures, with stories, and I appreciate it all. And I appreciate your interest. I kind of feel like, it could be the happiest day of my life because there's so much interest here. I know some of you are just supporting me, but there's a lot of people just interested in Norwegian-American music, and that's really fantastic. Oh, I see more and more people coming in. This is so great. So I also want to thank our sponsors, and I want to thank the staff here at Vesterheim. Lauren and Lauren Johnson asked me about a year ago if I would be interested in helping do something with music with some kind of exhibition. And I was excited because I've retired, and it seems like a great time to really organize things that I had been collecting for my, adult life. And so that's where I started, was to look through my notes and my pictures and my recordings. I bought a cassette player so I could listen to old cassettes. And that's where I started. So a lot of the show started with music from the Decorah area, Spring Grove area, where I studied with Bill Sherburne. I also joined Facebook groups that I could find information from fiddlers. I got a lot of help from other organizations that had information about fiddlers from their area. And things just kept coming up. So I had some deadlines, and I remember I had a deadline, and Lauren said, "We're actually a little behind. You can have another week." I was like, "Oh, good!" And I added three more people that came. And just today, already Susan from Rochester brought some information about two more fiddlers that I'm excited to know more about too from this area. So I guess I'll tell you how the exhibition is organized a little bit here. The biggest question I get is, what's the difference between a fiddle and a violin? So if you have that question, you want to start over in the back corner there, where you can read the answers over there. I also have a panel on what's the difference between a fiddle and a Hardanger fiddle. They're two different instruments. And you'll also see two beautiful instruments made by major instrument makers of Norwegian-American background from the Upper Midwest. One of them is Knut Reindal, who has made the regular fiddle over there, and the Hardanger fiddle is made by the Helland brothers. So those are big names, and they're both violins that are in the collection of Vesterheim here that we're able to show you. So that is really cool. Then I would start maybe over on this wall in the other room there, where we have notable fiddlers is what I called it. And I started with my very favorite superstar, international sensation, Ole Bull, who I read a couple books about him. I can't get enough about him. He came to America as a performer. He was already popular in Europe, but he came to America when America was just starving for culture and they wanted some excitement and they wanted good music. And he came and he was just a total smash. So whereas other musicians thought, this is too crude and backward over here, we don't want to come, he loved it. So he was an adventurer. Besides coming here, he went to Cuba, he went to Quebec, he went to Egypt and played on top of the pyramids. He was just like this, he was this amazing person. And he was, the other performers were kind of right. It was dangerous to be a traveling performer at that time. He was in a crash of 2 steamships where there was a fire. He had to jump into the freezing water and swim to shore. He was in a fire the night before he played in Decorah. He played in Decorah at the Opera House, the Steyr Opera House. And he was in a fire in Iowa City the night before. There were so many fires in the 1870s. I had no idea. There was so many, the same time as the Chicago fire and all that. Anyway, so he ran out of the hotel in Iowa City with his fiddle and his nightshirt on, and he actually forgot something he wanted. He paid someone to run in and get his watch. He was given so many gifts. He was given Arabian horses, and he was given jewels. His bow was filled with diamonds. Well, I can go on and on about him. I didn't have a chance to write any of that, all that good stuff, I don't think, in there. Oh, but he also married, his second marriage was to a woman from Madison. And I was in Madison for a semester in 2022. And that's where I read the books and got interested, since I was right in his home area there. That was fun. The other thing I thought about last night is, I bet that he had something to do with interest among Norwegian Americans in playing the fiddle, because I don't know, people just thronged his concerts. You can imagine that, I don't know, I'd go home and practice after I heard that. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Another panel I don't want you to miss on that side is one about Olaf Nepper, who went by the fiddle name of Nepperin. And mostly, it's kind of a long panel, but I feel like it describes kind of the whole situation of when he left. When he left Norway, he was a big deal over there. And as he left, he played the fiddle on the ship, and all the people stood and waved, and I just thought, wow, that's really saying goodbye when you left Norway with all your stuff. There he went. And a lot of really good fiddlers came to this country from Norway. They lost a lot of good ones. Some went back again, but they did lose a bunch. Anyway, there's a story of his, kind of the whole thing. At that, people learn music by ear, right? This folk music, and it takes a long time to learn. So he in his older years, he went around and he lived with people so they could learn music, or they came and lived with him for a while. So anyway, there's a bunch of stuff about him. Then I guess I want to tell you about Ole Hendricks, also in that section. And there's some of the Hendricks family who has come here from a distance, and that's really cool. The story of how I ended up with Ole Hendricks' fiddle, or how even it survived, is pretty amazing. And it's kind of a long story, but that's told in a book that's called Ole Hendricks and His Tune Book, which is down in the museum shop. Amy Shaw wrote that book. But we have 2 really cool things of Ole's here. We have his fiddle, which is on the wall in that room. And we have his handwritten tune book, which is in the back corner over here. And that was really cool because there weren't very many people that kept their tunes written out. Another one who did is Johan Arndt. But it's really something, and you can learn a lot about what was being played, what was being danced to, what were the influences, and not all the music played by Norwegian-American fiddlers came from Norway. A lot of it was influenced by their neighbors or things that were popular, written. I mean, some of the things in these tune books might have been copied off of somebody's sheet music that they had, all that stuff. So anyway, grateful to have family members. I know there's other families represented here too. Sorry, I have kind of my back to you, don't I? Okay. Then in the case right in kind of the middle of this room, I'll point out that there is a fiddle case there that was the traveling fancy case for a fiddler named Hans Fikerud, born in Norway. He was popular in Norway. I think he and his brother toured, and they kind of made sort of like a bridge between classical and folk music, and kind of took the performance up, the showmanship up and stuff. So anyway, he came to Stoughton, Wisconsin, where he had a saloon. Ole Hendricks also had a saloon. And he would play in the doorway to get people to come in. He would go down when the train came in, and he'd play to try to like, hey, there's this bar over here, and I'm going to be playing in there. And so that he's one of those. He came over. I think he came over here. I think there were 5 kids, or there were 5 kids by the time his wife died, with the youngest one age 1. I can hardly believe that. Anyway, eventually he ended up going back to Norway and died there, but then he sent this case back to a daughter in Wisconsin. It was apparently painted green, and then they had it restored, so it looks really nice, and that's in there. And in that same case, look really closely, because there's a 1/2-inch gold fiddle that was made by Mark Bergdorf, who, if you're from Decorah, you know Mark was a great character around this town, and he was a jeweler, and so his piece is in that case too. Don't miss that. There's also a panel in that room that shows Dora Nilsson, and I was really excited to find out about Dora. My friend Kari from Norway went to a program by Benedicte Morseth, who is a top Hardanger fiddle player in Norway, and she wrote to me the next day, and she said, I was at this unforgettable experience, a wonderful program that about women fiddlers, forgotten fiddlers, was called Sister Spell, or Sisters Who Play. And she said, one of the things that happened, or one of the things that Benedicte talked about, was that there was a woman named Dora Nelson, who apparently was a Hardanger fiddle player in the United States. But apparently she died young and died on stage, and they don't know what happened to her. Have you heard of this person? And I hadn't, and I contacted quite a few people who hadn't heard of her either. But then I got a hold of Jim Leary, who is retired now, but from the University of Wisconsin, and he told me how to scan old newspaper articles, and he quickly sent me several that included Dora. So, oh my goodness, I was on that for a long, long, long time. Found lots of articles about Dora, and she ended up, I think what happened, I don't know what happened, but there was a little article that said, in one of the papers, that said that there is a young woman who is a great fiddler. She can't afford the education. We're hoping that somebody can help her get an education. And I assume that was maybe how she got in touch with then Lars Fikerud, brother of Hans Fikerud, I told you about a minute ago. And Lars was a touring fiddler from Norway, a fantastic one. He really hoped to make it big in this country. He had won the top prize at a competition there, and I think he thought he was going to maybe be like Ola Bull and come over and just make millions. He ended up spending as much as he made, and I mean, it didn't. He had some great tours, but anyway, one tour, one summer, Dora played with him. Dora played with him for at least 12 concerts, and she was super popular. We don't really know how she died. It wasn't with him on that concert tour. It may have been, I found more information that she had gone on to study in Duluth and in Chicago, I believe. So she might have been in an orchestra, or I don't know what happened to her. There's so much to still find out about her. But you know what? I think it's time for a tune. I've been talking a lot. John, would you come help me, please? I'm going to play you a couple tunes now from the fiddlers that I have learned about in this area. One was Gust Ellingson, who ran the Ellingson Elevator up in Spring Grove, Minnesota. And
Still Ellingson's Elevator.
there is still Ellingson's Elevator. I think it's a different family now.
Let's try it again.
Okay.
Let's try it a third time.
Come over here. Okay. You're going to go dun, 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 dun.
Just like in our living room.
Might as well do two while we're here.
Okay.
We'll play a schottisch that I learned from Bill Sherburne up in Spring Grove. This is one that I've played for decades now. So if you've come to a Footnotes dance, I'm pretty sure you've played, or you've danced, or you've heard this one. It's named after Henry Storhoff, who was a Lanesboro fiddler and psalmodicon player. So it's Henry Storhoff's schottisch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I don't want to tell you too much. I think I'm starting to tell you too much about here. I really want you to read what is on these panels, which is what I spent the time doing. But to give you the basic outline then, over in this section we have, it runs in the family. So there were a lot of family groups that we put together here. Blagans, Arndt Mosted, we have the Moen family. We have Vika Pater and Jacob Nelson and Susan Karpowitz. We have the Lundvet. So the families are over in that area. And then there's a section, I think it's around over there on women. Yeah. So I've been kind of on a mission to share information about women and girls who fiddled, because they have not been seen or remembered as much. More represented now, of course, now these days. But in the past, there were women and girls who fiddled, and their stories, some of them are here for you to read. There's Randy Severson is one from over in the Eau Claire area, and she was a seamstress, and she was a fiddler, so she could make the wedding dress for you, and then she could play for your... It's cool. I mean, and she rode around on her bike to do all this stuff. That was really cool. Ethel Arnes Felke made massive amounts of lefse, and she sold them at the Fairway store. She did it in the fall up till Christmas time, when she could keep things cool in her some place where it was cool in her cellar, not her cellar. I don't know. She had a special place where she could keep things cool. Her husband would keep the wood stove. It was all done on the wood stove, going with the corn cobs and stuff late into the night when he had to go. They farmed, so when he had to go to bed, then her daughter came, and they'd work through the night sometimes to get enough lefse for everybody. Sold it for $0.25 a dozen. So I'm telling you about her. Her daughter didn't know that she played the fiddle until she was blind, and she got out she wanted to have her fiddle so she could play again. So that was cool, and she even played at her church. So she, remembered something from way in the past. So that was interesting to know about her. Let's see. There's in the case over back in that room by the women there's a case that was painted for me by Helen Erie, who was another fiddler who was represented on one of the panels. So I love having that. And I guess while I'm talking about it, in that same case is a fantastic fiddle made by Karen Rebholz from Madison. I went over to pick it up from her. It's made with her teacher in mind. So the scroll is carved like the woman's head, like her teacher's head, and she's wearing the head dress from the bunad from the area that woman's family came from, and all of the decoration on it was inspired by the embroidery and some of the things having to do with her costume. So that's really amazing. So there is a section on fiddle makers too, and that's over in this corner here. Yeah. So don't miss that. One of the fiddle makers over there, Bud Larson, is also, there's a piece on him. This is our little movie section with movies going all the time. And there's a movie on Bud Larson and his fiddle making. There's one on Elmo Wick, a tune collector and fiddler, who also has a panel of him here. And that was done by Clawhammer Mike, who is always playing on the Stone Arch Bridge up in Minneapolis. Really cool. I'm standing by the black fiddle, my goodness. I have to tell you about this. This fiddle has a dark history in Norway. The story goes that there was a fiddle maker who was visited by a mysterious person who gave him some wood and said, "This is some wood you can make an instrument out of." And he thought, well, it doesn't look that great, but I could use the wood, and he made a fiddle out of it. He kind of painted it, or kind of stained it this dark color to kind of hide the fact that it wasn't the highest quality wood. But when it was played, things went haywire in any of the locations where it was played. Fights would come out. People who, if they were at a wedding dance or something, it'd be a big fight. And so the person who made it still owned it and kind of rented it out to fiddlers who wanted to play. Well, and then he kind of put it away when things got kind of bad. Someone else bought it then, and after a number of years, he was asked to play, and he's like, no, I don't think I should do that. No, come on, let's do it. So he played, and started out okay, and things turned and went really bad, and big fight broke out, and he was injured, and in fact died 3 days later, and the fiddle was gone, disappeared, and the people from that community have wondered what happened to it ever since, and I'm not exactly sure how, but eventually a woman in Iowa ended up with this fiddle that her husband's relative had brought over with him when he immigrated, and it ends up she had it put back together, sent it to Norway, had it put back together in that community. It's been played with uneventfully since then. And we're going to get to hear it also in October. If you grab one of the cards, the rack cards when you head out, that has some dates of programs, and one is a couple of musicians are coming from Norway to tell about the fiddle and to play it. So that's really amazing. Yeah. Let's see. Well, gosh. The other thing, there's a little binder over here. It's just on the floor now. I think I took the stand it was on. But it's a place that I'm hoping that we can add more fiddlers, more information, more musicians. There's already stuff in there, and I just got more stuff today so if you have things that you know about fiddlers, if you want to do some, if you're inspired to do some searching in your family, or don't mind sending copies, photos, or recordings, any of that stuff. I mean, recordings don't go in there, but I'm interested in recordings. That would be so cool. I don't know. I think probably I'm going to have John come up and we'll play one last tune here. I actually composed a piece for this event. So it's a little bit kind of like a tongue twister to play, so I hope it works out okay. But it's called Hand Me Down the Fiddle. It's a waltz, which is what most tunes Norwegian Americans tend to play, at least on the regular fiddle. So here's Hand Me Down the Fiddle, and thank you so much.
Who's going to play the black fiddle?
So Nina Bittensmuir is her name. She's a young, she's a young woman from Norway. She's going to come to the United States for her first time, and she'll be playing it. And she'll be here with Paul Sveinal, who is someone who used to fiddle a lot. He's a teacher. He's in his 80s now. He wanted someone younger to be the one to play it. So, yeah, they're going to be here in October sometime, yeah. Do you want two tunes? Okay. John just said, aren't you going to play Randy Severson's? Yeah, I've got a waltz from the woman who was the seamstress and the fiddler. We'll play that one first. That's Randy Severson's waltz. I think we talked about the questions, and you might have some questions. I'm thinking that maybe I will go into the other room to talk for questions, because I really hope that you can read some of these panels, and I think if people are talking, it's a little harder to read. So if that's okay with you, we'll play the last tune here, and then I think Lorianne will have a few more things to say too.
How about another round of applause for John Rotto and Beth Hoven Rotto? Of course. And thank you, Beth, for making this exhibit so special, a special tune for the exhibit, the beautiful writing, the collection of stories. It's just wonderful. Well done. As Beth mentioned, we have an impressive lineup of programming throughout this exhibit, which is up into May of 2025. So this is the rack cards she referred to. There's some in the lobby and some near the door. And on the back side is this list of programs. We've got special lectures. We've got a webinar with a Norwegian scholar. We've got performances by Decora's own Eden Aim. She'll be doing a hard fiddle concert if you're curious about that instrument. And we've also got classes with Beth and also a teacher from Norway. But the very first thing in September is a footnotes dance in our brand new building, the Commons, so you'll want to mark your calendar for that one. As Beth mentioned, she'll be available for questions in the adjacent gallery, so you can ask her questions, you can share stories of fiddlers in your family. I know she'd love to hear those. Thank you again to our exhibit sponsors, the American Scandinavian Foundation, Carol Birkland and Tom Woxland, Peter Dahlen and Mary Carlsen. Thank you also to the many of you who have contributed stories, photographs, instruments, and programming opportunities for us. We're very grateful. And thank you all for coming today. Thank you.